And this week we have Bobby, the CEO of Renovating Retirement here. We're going to be talking about working with teams and working with people in general and kind of how to optimize and maximize some of those situations, interactions, and get the team a little bit better. First, last week I talked about the app Clockwise that I had just looked into, read the description of. And so I've been using it this week, and here's kind of my lessons learned so far. Overall, I like it, but it is designed for teams. So if you have multiple people and you're coordinating with your team for meetings and that kind of stuff, it would be absolutely phenomenal and amazing. There's some functions that just don't apply, and they're a little bit clunky and cumbersome because of that. So one of the features, you can book an internal meeting and you can set it as flexible. So it will then look at everybody's calendars and it will book based on optimizing the focus times and not conflicting with anybody's other appointments. That doesn't really work if you're just booking sales appointments or things outside of your company, if you will. But I do really like that it gives you links. So you can send to a client, you can have 3 or 4 different types of, a 30-minute or a 60-minute or whatever. It's very customizable. And you can send it to someone. And then when they look at the times, they choose their day, and it actually suggests like best option, which is the option that's going to maximize your focus times. So if someone has all day open, they're more likely to pick a time that's going to be better for you than to just randomly pick a time, say in the middle of your day. That's the update on that. I don't know if I'm going to use it long term, but I'm going to keep using it for now. And it is nice to have the focus times kind of in your face on your calendar. Oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So I did mention a little bit last week about time blocking, and that I had come across Clockwise when I was looking at ways to manage kind of time blocking and to use my calendar to help me stay focused. Bobby, you want to talk a little bit about time blocking in general? And then I think you had a little exercise for us.
Absolutely. So taking a quick step back, I know Ada was incredibly excited to talk about Clockwise, give you guys an update. But real quick, I am the CEO of Renovating Retirement. Charlie Jewett is my mentor. He taught me the financial services world. And I have been working in and for businesses for a long time, in both the acquisition, the roll-ups, starting them, failing at some, just kind of doing the whole entrepreneurial journey. And so I brought skill sets to Charlie's team that weren't there before, because I like to run companies. So one of the things that I'll talk about today and that I've been going through recently was a recent partial acquisition of a company in Hawaii. So it's in a different field altogether, but I do consulting for equity. And part of that is coming on board with a team, doing assessments, kind of seeing how everything is going, and then making recommendations, changes, et cetera, to increase profitability. And then ultimately, both me and the company benefit. So part of what we'll talk about is, and what Ada asked me to come on and talk about, was kind of how to speak to people that maybe aren't in the financial world, right? You have an assistant, or you're trying to partner with a real estate broker who wants to bring you business, and vice versa, or a mortgage lender, things like that, as well as maybe you're growing your own team. And that's where I love, right? Once you can start to buy back your own time, free yourself up to focus on your unique genius, as I'll refer to it, the thing that really lights you up and you're really good at, man, your business explodes. So getting the nuisance stuff, the low dollar, or at least low interest for you, because it could be high dollar. Like, you could just hate closing sales. Most entrepreneurs don't hate that, but you could. And you could hate that, so you want to outsource it, because that doesn't light you up. And when you are lit up, you are so much more productive. Customers buy more, people, employees love to work with you, et cetera. So that's part of my journey and my evaluation of companies. So that's a little backstory about me. And then I just transitioned. I just spent the last month and a half in Hawaii working with this team. And now I'm here back in Denver, getting ready to go back to Hawaii. So it's a rough life. It's a rough life out there. But before we jump into time blocking, let's find out a little bit more about Ada's week, because normally she doesn't get interviewed on these things. Ada, how was your week?
Not as productive as it could have been, which sucks. I started out last week. I actually started my kind of trying to manage my time and plan my tasks, and I did really well. And then I didn't spend as much time planning for this week, and it really showed.
Yep, and I can see you currently have your hands full, and I'm sure that's not a usual place for you.
Yes.
And so part of what we work with on our team, right, is planning your week, right? You can go through and plan out a great week, and it can all go to crap. But if you have a plan, you at least know how to course correct to it, right? You felt that this week, right? The last week you crushed it, and you've got way less time right now than you did a month ago. And so to feel like you crushed it, even when you're working on less time, it's a really good feeling, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So give me one highlight from this week. Give me a good. Whoa, Zeke, what do you think?
Say that one more time.
Give me one highlight from this week, something you really felt good about, whether it's personal or professional.
Personal, I started working out.
That's
and
huge.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sore, but I feel so good.
Yep. And that's one thing I'm learning too, right? I'm working in 4 different businesses that I own right now. And if you don't take care of yourself and prioritize your health, like I'm from the military, I'm used to burning the candle at both ends, and you just can't do that. As an entrepreneur, you know, as a new mom, right? I can't even imagine. but on the other side, like you got to take care of yourself so that you can provide, whether it's emotional support or going out and making that money. So good for you getting that kicked off. And, you know, I can't wait to check in and see the progress in the coming weeks, months, or if there's no progress, the learnings, right? No failures.
Yes.
Learnings.
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that you heard kind of Ada hint on, and that we talked about last week, was focus blocks or time blocks. This is something that I bring to every organization. You do a time assessment, and this is part of a bigger picture, but this is for every entrepreneur. So I don't care if you're in finance. I don't care if you're a personal trainer. I don't care if you sell widgets, right? The idea is we react really, really well. Entrepreneurs by nature are amazing firefighters and problem solvers, period. The problem we all have, and this is speaking for myself too, is we can solve everyone's problem. So we feel like we can help everyone. And so doing that takes your focus away from whatever moves your real needle. Let's say you sell widgets, right? Or let's use something I actually know. let's say you sell insurance, and you are like, my perfect demographic target is, you know, white males aged 30 to 50 who are entrepreneurs. That is my perfect client. And then you're like, well, I'm married, so I should help married people. And then, well, the wives sometimes have businesses, so then I should help them. And then, well, they have kids, so I should put together plans. So you start figuring out where your product fits instead of being specific about how you can move the needle. So in that example, say I bring insurance to entrepreneurs who are my age and demographic. I think I lost Ada. She might be reaching out to me. She'll be back in a second. But with the, there she is. Oh, okay, you do it.
They killed the power.
Welcome back.
Whoops.
So what we were just talking about was niching down and figuring out what moves your needle. Okay. If I'm an insurance person and I serve one particular niche client and that's the best for me, then expanding, and even though you can help everyone, you can make all their dreams come true. But when you spread yourself too thin and when you're everyone's answer, you're no one's answer. So by niching down and figuring out what moves the needle for your group, that can be marketing, that can be content creation, that can be you getting more sales calls, whatever that is how you determine your focus time. So the same thing can work for your assistant, because that becomes, this is the most important thing for me to move the needle. So that needs to be your priority in getting that on my calendar, right? Something like that can be how we start to move the needle in a business. And so the way you start to figure that out is you start to do time assessments. You can go as granular as every 5 minutes, like Elon Musk, which is crazy to me, but some people, that's how their brain works. And then there's other, like if I do 15-minute blocks and every 15 minutes I have a small alarm go off, doesn't have to be crazy. Please don't make it crazy, because a lot of times you're going to be in the middle of something. But knowing for the last 4 15-minute blocks, I was in a meeting and I was focused here, my energy was here, and you start building around your energy and your productivity, you can then design your ideal week. That is the point of being an entrepreneur. Not only do I have immediate impact on my business because I'm focused and I have my ideal week, but now I can start outsourcing the things I don't want to do. Doesn't mean you're not good at them. It doesn't mean you can't do them, but it does mean it's a leverage point for yourself. So in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to drop some major bombs that have changed my business. So here's a couple. How can I afford to hire an assistant? This is a hard question, right? And then if I hire an assistant, what on earth are they going to do? So there's a few great books. I mean, I've read probably a dozen on this concept, and ultimately you're going to find one that speaks to you. But here's the concept in Bobby speak. You need to assess where you're actually spending your time and your energy. So that can be that 15-minute timer, that can be a half-hour timer, whatever, but you really do need to sit down and assess where your energy and where your efforts are going, period. Only then do you have the real data to figure out where your time's going. If you spend hours scrolling on Facebook, or you take, men, if you spend a little bit too much time in the bathroom, like getting some alone time, then that's a safe haven, and you need to just realize it's happening, not freak out about it. Think of this assessment as looking with a flashlight, trying to shine a light on it. Don't look with a hammer looking to fix things. All you're doing is noticing what's happening. So number one, you need to do an assessment. Once you do that, you can go through and let's say you go with my 15-minute method, right? Every 15 minutes, write down what you're doing and rank your energy level and your productivity. So if you use a scale of 1 to 10, use a scale of 1 to 5, doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. For me, I use 1 to 5. How is my energy and how is my productivity? You will find that when you start to have 5s in both sections, that's your unique genius. That, like when I get on a sales call and I'm educating someone and I'm showing them what's going on, what the financial tools can really do, all of these extra steps that they never knew about, I get excited as hell, because we're going against the grain, we're educating, we're just showing facts, we're bringing resources. That's where I love to be. I'm not a hard closer. I do know how to do it, but I'm not an aggressive closer. I want people to see that it's the right decision and then reinforce them and strengthen them along the way. So that is my unique area of genius. Additionally, I hate doing admin work. hate it with a passion, but I also know it's essential to my business. So what does that mean? Well, when I'm going through and I'm doing client meetings back to back to back to back, my energy's high, my productivity's high, and maybe at the end I'm exhausted, right? You notice that your energy dips when you're done. But then I got to roll around and I got to do application follow-up. I got to work with these banks and financial institutions. And I notice that my energy drags. It's super productive, but it's annoying. And it's a high value task that I hate. So as I go through that assessment, I'm like, okay, energy, productivity, great, every 15 minutes. Do it for 2 weeks. Don't do 1 week. Don't do 1 day, 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yep.
So let me ask, how are you tracking? Like, are you every 15 minutes taking an assessment, or every hour, or looking back across your day?
If I am not actively in the middle of something, I am taking that assessment every 15 minutes. So for me, I use Evernote on my phone, or I use Evernote on my desktop. If I'm at my desktop, I have a spreadsheet in Evernote and I just drop things in. And I have, what am I doing? Like you can block out the times ahead of time. I have them down the left-hand column, right? Then what are you doing at this time? And this is business hours. If your business hours are all over the map, I would still recommend doing it, because you're going to have family time and you're going to have this, and you still need to track that. I think when you're awake, you should track it. It's just a 2-week sprint, and I do this every quarter. So when I go through, because what happens when you get a new assistant? Your whole world changes. So then a quarter down the road, you want to do the assessment again, right? So I go through, and when I'm not busy, I put it in. And busy only means client facing or on the phone. Like, it doesn't mean, like this podcast, I'm not answering my phone, I'm busy.
Right.
So at the end of this podcast, I would then say, okay, I spent 15 minutes doing podcasts, and I just repeat that 4 times. And I say my productivity was very good. And by the way, productivity can also mean commission or dollar amounts, like however you want to focus that task, as far as, do you feel it was productive? That's what I call productivity. So it could be physical fitness, and that's super productive, right? But you get to the end of the hour, you go back, you repeat it 4 times. My energy was crazy high. My productivity was crazy high. Then when you're done with 2 weeks, you go back in. This is where the real flashlight happens. You look at your 2 weeks, and you go through and you list how valuable that activity is to your business. Okay. So you can do it like Yelp. You can do dollar signs for how expensive or profitable. I like using dollar signs because it makes me feel like it's productive, like dollars. But you can do 1 to 3, 1 to 5, however many dollar signs you want to do. And then you go through and you say, where were my dollars minimal? Like, I had $1 sign on this task. So I'm going to go through and look to eliminate that, particularly, and there's a whole quadrant you can set up for this. But the idea is you want to be spending your time after you do this assessment on the high energy, high productivity, high dollar amount stuff. That's where you, the entrepreneur, want to be. Okay. That's going to be your zone of genius that pays you the most. Now, this podcast, right? It's not going to be a high dollar amount, but it's got the other 2 buckets, right? It's productive, it's building something for the business, and it's something that lights me up. I get energy from it, right? So what you want to do, once you put the dollar signs in there for 2 weeks, now you go back, and I like to use red and green highlighters, but you can do whatever you want. This is just really visual to me. So I'll print out that spreadsheet and I will highlight. The green is the good stuff, where I want to focus my time. That's high dollar, high energy, high productivity, right? So this podcast may be ranked lower on productivity depending on how you want your scale, but you know it's making an impact, right? But the energy is crazy high and it has a better long-term vision. You want to go back and see the low dollar amount, low energy areas. Low dollar, low energy means you hate it. It may be super productive. It may move the needle, but you hate doing it. And what happens if you hate doing something? You're not going to want to do it, and you're not going to do it well.
Yeah.
But there are people out there for everything you hate doing. That's their zone of genius, right? Some people love spreadsheets. Some people hate them. Think of that as an easy example, right?
Yeah.
It could be moving the needle for your company, but you hate to do it, which means you just grudge through it. Whereas if I brought somebody in who was a super nerd like you and I, right, who just loves spreadsheets, that would light them up to go play with the spreadsheets. That's what you think about. Don't think about, oh, I'm pawning this shitty task off on somebody, right? No, you're giving someone the opportunity to do what they love too.
Yeah.
So you go through and you mark those with red. Low dollar, low energy tasks, you mark those with red. So now you say, okay, I know where my energy lacks. I know where my energy gets lit up and what I do to help move the needle on my company. So now you say, Bobby, how do I outsource that? How do I know I can hire someone, right? This is genius. I picked this up from Dan Martell. He's a founder of the SaaS Academy. So he has a super simple equation. When you are going to outsource something, you want to outsource that for a quarter of what it costs your time. Okay? So we're gonna walk through this. But yeah, I had the same thing. It's like, okay, how do I find out what a quarter of my time is worth, right? Here's super basic math. All you math nerds will be more granular than this, but this will help you totally there. Let's say you make $200,000 a year or $100,000 a year, whatever number we want to use. We'll use 100 first. $100,000 a year. And I'll pull up my calculator for those of you who are going to fact check me. $100,000 divided by 2,000. The reason 2,000 is because there's about 2,080 hours in a year. You're going to take some vacation in a work year, I should say, work year. So that's 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, gives you 2080. So if you take 100,000 and divide by 2,000, gives you 50. That means if you're making $100,000 a year, your dollar per hour is about $50 per hour. Now, we know we, as entrepreneurs, work more than 40 hours a week. I get that. But use this for the rough math for someone you might hire. So if you only worked 40 hours a week, 2,000 gets you down to $50 an hour. Now, if we want to pay somebody who is going to cost 25% of what it would cost me, you take that number and you divide by 4. That means you're going to pay $12.50 an hour for an assistant. Just with rough numbers. If you do that, you will free your time up to take tasks off your plate that you hate and then double down on where you're producing money. So let's say you do that audit and you go through and it takes you maybe 2 weeks time, you do 8 hours of admin work a week. So there's 16 hours that BS work for you. Mm-hmm. You're going to outsource that to somebody for $12.50 an hour or less if you're tight on budget. And if you can't find that person, a digital assistants, virtual assistants are huge nowadays. I work with people in the Philippines sometimes. $5 an hour is like $50 an hour here. So they have a hugely productive life, and I'm paying. So not that fits everybody, but that's an idea. So then you now have what your buyback rate is. This is how much you are willing to pay to buy back that time. So take a minute with that one. We've just figured out, based on how much you make, what it would smartly cost to outsource some of your really mundane tasks you do not like. And if you make $200,000, that number is $25 an hour. If you make $500,000 and so on, right? You're just, for all you math nerds, you probably figured out you can just divide by 8,000, right? But it's the same idea. So first off, Ada, that's the first time you've heard that. What do you think about
Yes.
that? Oh, all I see is
I'm still here. The power's off. Yeah. Oh, I'm back. They're working in the next office over, and
okay.
So
That's the first time I've walked you through that.
Yes.
Immediate thoughts.
Very intriguing. I like the figuring out the buyback time for the assistant. Because I have sort of fallen in my lap the opportunity to have an assistant. I don't know if it's short-term or long-term, but I was sitting down actually last week and going, okay, what's the list of stuff that I can have her do? And so it's interesting to hear that, and then to think about what you should outsource, right? Like based on the energy. So I'm going to be doing one of these assessments on my time and energy, because that is a really excellent way of looking at it.
It's for us engineer minds, this was the methodology that made the most sense to me.
Yeah.
There are many different ways to cut this, but this worked for my brain.
Well, and I like it because as you make more, you can start paying somebody to do more advanced tasks. So I know somebody who was an executive assistant, and she made $100,000 a year, but she wasn't just doing filing. Like, she was doing a far more advanced work than sending thank you notes or responding to emails or putting information into a spreadsheet or whatever. Like, and so obviously, like, who she was working for needed that advanced skill set that she was bringing to the table. And so it's I think it is an excellent way of kind of looking at how you can start small and then be able to, as you grow, outsource more and more advanced tasks, because what you can afford to buy back increases.
Absolutely. I mean, another way to think about that is we have been producing more content. I need a content editor, right?
Yeah.
I'll get on podcasts all day and just talk. I love that. I don't know if you know this, but I like to talk. But on the same time, I don't want to go back and edit it, right? And when you're working and figuring this out yourself, you'll have to start low. But it doesn't mean you have to stay there. And if you wait until you're completely tapped out on energy, you can't focus anymore, you're burning out, hire them, you're too late. You will burn out while trying to find the right person. Or you will hire the first person that falls in your lap, and you don't know what their zone of genius is, right? So you don't know if they like doing this. And it could be just a shitty marriage that eventually also burns out. So that methodology I've applied in my life. I'm working to improve the method because it's never ending, right? But now that I've got different businesses pulling my focus, I need a gatekeeper, right? And Calendly is not a gatekeeper. Calendly is a booking tool. And I want someone to get in there and be like, look, Bobby's time. And Zeke understands. Sometimes you just get that time, they just eat it up. There he is.
There he is, the weirdo making all the noise.
Oh, that's me. So the next part of this journey, I've now assessed my time. I've now figured out what my buyback rate is, and I've hired someone. Actually, let's take it there. I haven't hired someone. The most logical next question is, what do I hire them to do, and how do they know to do it? Right? That's where I got frozen.
My other question is, how do you ensure you're hiring somebody that whose genius is the right kind to fit into your needs, which I guess comes after the what do you have them do.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. So the overall process is figure out what you need to outsource, find what your buyback rate is, figure out what you want to outsource and what that success would look like, Then start finding the right people. Then you hire them, and then you fill your time. You don't take a vacation because you gave 8 hours away a week or 30 hours away. You fill that with more productive time. That's where people get this wrong, is they don't double down on what they're doing that crushes it. So when we go through here and we say, I hate doing admin work. It costs me $12.50 to buy back my time. I want to do that. Here's what success would look like, because I'm going to have them jump on and take over my email and my calendar right away. They own it. I'm going to put processes in place so I don't have to get crazy specific, but they're going to be my filter and they're going to own it. Then, now that I'm not doing the scheduling, calling, booking things, all that stuff, now I've got him or her doing that. Now I go back and I double down on what I want to do, right? I go back to those green highlights in that sheet and I say, talking with Ada on podcasts was huge. It has a low ROI right now, but I know in the future it's going to produce more because I need content out there for people to find what we do. And then I finish my book that I'm writing. I start doubling down on where I can impact the business, where my unique genius is. That's the magic power of buying back your time. So we'll walk through that real quick, right? So I figured out what I want to do. I figured out what I don't want to do. Now I figured out what the buyback rate is. So $12.50, maybe that's low, maybe that's high, maybe you make more money, less money, whatever. Just know there are people all over the world who can do digital work at scale for very, very cheap. So if you are a $50,000 earner, like I think the average salesperson in America makes $40,000. A sin. It's horrible. But if you make $44,000, your buyback rate is going to be much smaller. Maybe it's $5 an hour. You can outsource admin tasks, booking your calendar, marketing, editing, whatever. You can outsource that for very cheap when you start looking at asynchronous work or people that are not right next to you.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to have them take over my email and my calendar. Now I need to start mapping out what that looks like. There's guides everywhere. This is what success looks like in my email. I never miss an email that's important. Someone always responds in 24 hours, even if it's to tell them that you are my assistant and you're going to escalate that to Bobby. Yep. That's huge, right? You know it's been heard. You know that it's being dealt with and it will be on my radar. So clients love it. Clients are like, oh my God, I can't wait to meet Valerie. She's amazing. So those conversations are happening without having to involve me. Hey, Bobby's traveling right now, but I know this is important. I'm going to make sure he sees this right when he comes back. I don't have to leave an out-of-office responder. I have someone responding to them, right? Hey, Bobby's in Hawaii working for the next month. The time zones are a little off, but I'll make sure he sees this on our next meeting tomorrow. All of those can be simple, quick responses that just tell the person, client, professional partner, whatever, that they're being heard, right? So now that response happens. Someone tries to book on my calendar. The only now go through her, right? Mm-hmm. And it comes on the calendar and she prioritizes my days and times because we meet every day or every other day. And she knows what my answers are going to be and she's developing my voice, right? Not everybody's going to have it right away, but what does success look like for you is unique. I want to have everything responded to in one day. I want to have it tagged so important stuff is me. And I want to discuss this every day in our 15-minute meeting. Boom. Now I've outsourced the biggest headache of my life, which is scheduling clients, which is getting them back on my calendar, chasing people down, saying it doesn't work for me, does it work for you? She owns my calendar. So she's the one who can prioritize my tasks because she knows what is a priority to me. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Right? Hey, go get this person on my calendar. I'm going to do my annual reviews. By the way, if you don't do annual reviews, you should. And put that on my calendar. And when you put that on my calendar, I need this, this, and this ahead of time. And you'll develop these outsourcing tools and everything else. But right away, low-hanging fruit is email and calendar. And if you can't trust them, that's something you have to all sorts of management tools in place for. But really, what can happen if they manage your inbox? Well, they could buy something with an email authorization. So I put in all of my communications with my vendors. Email authorization is not sufficient, right? You got to hear from me. So little things like that you'll learn, and you can get lessons learned all over the internet. But that's one really low-hanging fruit that can free up time for you and make a huge difference in your life. So then the next part, and I know you're frozen right now. So the next part is, oh, there you are. So what do you think about that before we talk about how to find those people?
I think that it is surprisingly simple for as not simple a concept as it is.
Right? You're going to be like, why didn't I do this later or earlier?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I really, really like the defining what success looks like for each task.
Yeah.
And I think I'm actually going to implement for next week. I'm going to implement that for myself as well, so that, especially on bigger tasks, so that I'll have a more achievable goal, right? Like, okay, I'm working on editing this content. What does success look like? Is it having it all the way done? Is it having it done and published? Is it having, what does that, so that my task doesn't just say work on content.
Yeah. And I think that I also got this from Dan, definition of done is what he calls that. So whether it's for yourself or whether it's for your assistant or someone in your team, like when you and I work on a case, right? What is definition of done? Definition of done can be, he uses a brilliant example of buying a whiteboard. I need a whiteboard for my office. Definition of done is not find a cheap whiteboard, buy it, have it shipped by Amazon. No, it's I want a whiteboard mounted on the wall. I want to have a red, blue, green, black marker and an eraser on the tray, right? So that becomes very clear expectations. And for us as entrepreneurs, we have that in our head, but we don't always know how to articulate it. So it's a lesson for us to figure out how to do that. Because for me, it's totally logical that if something's hanging up, you do X, Y, Z. But that's in my head. And that's the biggest struggle entrepreneurs have, is getting it out of our head and putting it down on paper or systematizing it or whatever. And so that journey is one that it literally is a journey. You have to learn it every time you try to do one, particularly in the beginning. But that will be so beneficial for you, your organization, and your sanity.
I'm a fan. I'm excited to try it.
Good. All right. So lastly, I want to talk about how to find those people. Okay.
Yes.
So all marketing, you have to cast a wide net, and that wide net won't apply to most people, right? If I put out 300 pieces of content, maybe 10% of the people that watch them love them, right? Maybe 10% is too high. Maybe it's 2%. But the idea is the ones who love the content are going to be attracted to working with me, things like that. Same idea for hiring. Go to the people in your life, or if you already have a business, go to the high performers and have them say, hey, if you could work with anyone you know, who would it be? Because high performers attract high performers, period. No high performer wants to work with a schlub who doesn't show up to work, doesn't meet their deadlines. It is a huge detriment to hire a really crappy salesperson and have them try to shadow a really good salesperson, because they're just never going to meet the expectation. So finding high performers through high performers is super valuable, right? If you know a high performer and maybe you're looking for an administrative assistant, maybe their spouse, maybe their friends, maybe they're in between jobs, whatever. Or if you're looking for salespeople, go talk to your badass salespeople and have them reach out on your behalf and set meetings. And this is very virtuous cycle. If they know you value their opinion, they're going to want to deliver for you. And then you're going to have as close to a clone as you can get. So if you value that person, who they hang out with is going to be, what is it? The 5 people they hang out with is the average person, right? That's going to be who you're trying to attract. So casting a wide net, that's the first step. Second step is, how do you filter that, right? Mm-hmm. Make it hard.
Okay.
Seth Godin has a phrase that says, I can't work with you until I work with you, which sounds super weird, right?
Yes.
And so the way that I do this is I'll interview a bunch of people, a bunch of vendors, like I was looking for a marketing agency, right? Do a bunch of them and give them a task. The same thing works with interviewing. So part of your wide net, and this is something I picked up from Dan, I love, which is have them send you a video. Go through an entire sales ad, right? Position opening. At the bottom, if you want to apply, send me a video, 3 minutes, telling me about yourself or whatever specific thing.
Right.
What does that do? Well, if 100 people apply for the job, maybe 10 are going to actually do a video.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you right away they can't follow instructions. Right? I don't want those people.
Yep.
So they can't follow instructions, 90% gone, great. Right? Now I have 10. They followed the instructions. They did the video. Now I'll interview them. And my whole point of interviewing them is to push them away, find reasons why they have flags that are not going to work. When was the last time you overcame a struggle? Never had one, right? When was my boss loves me, everybody loves me, I don't have any problems in my life. Okay. So I like to tell them how hard it's going to be. I like to tell them, what sort of things we're dealing with, and really look for reasons that we have alignment, because half the interview should be spent seeing if they can deal with the stresses and whatever the environment is. The other half should be really finding out about them. Find out why they want to work with you. It's got to be beyond money, right? Because by the time you do this buyback cycle a few times, you're paying a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? So it's got to be more than money. And they have to see the vision. They have to, have a bigger impact that may or may not align with your company. You want the ones that create alignment. So let's say you have 10 first interviews. Like you'll have somebody screen them, and then you'll get in there and you'll jump into maybe 5, 6 of them and get that very specific alignment. Now you want to work with them. So maybe out of all of that, you end up with 4 very viable candidates. So you're trying to hire an assistant. I want to give you some vague instructions, and I like to pay them for this, right? It's not free work they're giving me. Like, hey, I'll pay you $20 an hour, or you agree to a fee, whatever it is. I have to see how you perform in order to make sure you're a good fit.
Okay.
So then for my assistant, I'll say, hey, send Ada a very thoughtful gift. That's it. If they then come back and ask me every question in the book, what's her son's name? What does she like to do? That's not who I want, because now I'm just creating more problems for myself, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody goes and researches you on Facebook. They look up your kids. They look up your husband. They say, okay, yep. So here's this. They could come back to me and say, hey, I found 3 things that I think would be really great for her. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not quite what I wanted. I wanted them to send you a gift.
Right.
So that could be me defining definition of done better, or it could be that they don't want to make a decision. They just want to do the research, which could be something that I could work with and improve that over time. But the third person goes off, researches, finds out that you love, we lost her again. So we'll give it a second. She might have lost power. I hope you guys are liking this. I know if any of you have stuck around this long, this is gold. So enjoy it. But it's taken me years to figure this out. And I'm very happy to share it because I want to shorten everybody's learning curve on here. All right, she's joining us now. There we go.
I am. This sucks. Okay, so the last thing I heard was the second potential assistant who does the research and says, okay, I found these 3 options.
Yep. So the third assistant, and then what I was saying there at the end was the second assistant may have had an issue with my definition of done. I may not have been clear, or maybe they just need more confidence, more working with to get them to make a decision. So that's a on the fence one. And the third assistant goes off, researches you, finds out you're a collector of antique hula hoops, and finds one and says, I found this on eBay for $200 and I sent it with a note and it'll arrive on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Boom. They solved the problem and they got it delivered to you and everything was resolved. Now that you can go back and forth on that, but that's the idea that we're trying to deliver there. Can they remove this task from you? So maybe you paid each one of those guys $100 to do those tasks. Mm-hmm. 2 of them didn't work out. The third one did. Now you sell, and you sell hard. If you know this person is right for you, you sell the vision of the company, the impact, sell all the things that working with you will bring them. Because you found your person, right? Yeah. You found, and another step you can alternately put in here is maybe a personality test. Just when you get down to like the 3 or 5 left, you don't have to do it for everybody, but the 3 or 5 you're really considering, do a personality test. See if they complement your weaknesses. Right? I like the Colby scores with their strengthfinders.com. There's a whole success factors, I think. There's a whole bunch of them. But that could be another step, right? And so once you know who the person is, you sell to your blue in the face. All the great things that's going to come out of this. And then you have your person. Mm-hmm. Now you fill that spot. You get them on track. And there's methods to do this. Dan calls it the camcorder method. Do a recording of you doing the task, give it to them, those kind of things. Wow. But all in all, that you have your person, invest all the time they need to get them up and running. Because when they are up and running and self-sufficient, game changer.
Yeah. I love it.
I know we went a little off track here, but this was so valuable. I wanted to make sure that we got it all in one video.
Well, I think that my initial response to your kind of, here's the person who goes out and buys the gift and done, and that's your person. I feel like for a lot of people who are starting the journey of finding an assistant, there's a huge fear of losing control. Very and true. So if you're someone in that position, then that second person who comes back and says, hey, I found these 3 might be a nice like stepping stone as you learn to man it, to work on your business instead of in your business. Mm-hmm. Because you still maintain a certain level of control over it, but it does free up a lot more of your time. Now it's 5 minutes.
Beautiful point. It's a beautiful point, right? Because a lot of this is us getting out of our own way. Yeah. and so maybe the person who comes back with three ideas is the right answer. And maybe you have to work on your definition of done, which is totally doable too. And then another golden nugget that Dan uses for this scenario as well. And I know this is books fresh in my mind, so a lot of this is coming from him, but it's in every book. He calls it the $50 silver bullet. Okay. And what that would mean for that assistant is if they can resolve a problem for $50 or less, they don't have to get your approval. Mm. And as you trust them more, it could be 100, it could be 500, whatever. That becomes, tell me about it at our next meeting, but you don't need my approval.
Yeah.
So I know I can buy this gift for this client, or I can outsource this marketing thing or whatever, right? For $100, and I can tell Bobby about it later.
Yeah.
that becomes super helpful when they know they have free reign, and that, and it could be $50, could be 100, could be 5,000, like whatever the size business you have. But if they know they have that control, and you know you have control above that, going back to your point, then you're both happy.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, this is kind of fresh in my mind because I was recently talking to a business owner, and we were talking about some of their struggles, you know, and how overwhelmed they are in all of the normal entrepreneur things. And you need an assistant. Like, you need somebody. You are spending too many hours on the phone following up. Hey, I'm, tracking this order. I'm following up on. As soon as you know what the product is, like, you don't need to be calling to see what the lead time, like, what the product is. Somebody, you can be paying them a lot less than your time is worth to do those phone calls. But their biggest fear was around losing control. Well, what if a client asks me for okay, well, at that point, it becomes about the technology that you're using to communicate with that person, right? So that if a client asks you, what's the status on my X, Y, and Z, and you're waiting on that order to come in, and the assistant's managing all of that, like, do you have the systems in place? And I think this is probably a whole nother episode, right? How do you have the systems in place so that you can work with a team and all stay on the same page? Absolutely. And that can be working with your assistant, but that can also be you and I are doing a joint work. How do we stay on the same page? And we've overcome some hurdles with this, right? So I think maybe on another episode, we'll talk about how do you stay on the same page? What kind of notes do you put in? What are different tools you might use? But back to kind of what we are talking about, once you have those systems, I think that you don't lose control by outsourcing. You gain time and you maintain control because it's all transparent.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of mental hurdles that entrepreneurs have to get over, right?
Yeah.
You'll hear me say over and over again, entrepreneurship is self-development disguised by profit. That's it. You're only ever going to get as far as you develop your own skills to get.
Yeah.
If you can't manage people, then you're going to be a one-man, one-woman shop as long as you have a business. If you don't want to do sales, then you're going to be in whatever back office support role that is, right? Or you're going to go learn and develop these skills. And it takes a while, and you have to want to do it. But that's your limitation. Your limitation is your own development. And so if losing control is part of your issue, I'm just saying.
One of the things you got to work on.
Yep. And for me, I went through the same things, right? Outsourcing too much, losing too much control. So for me, I said it was for them. Like, this is guide rails for them and helping them out. It was really for me. It was really making sure that I didn't lose control, right?
Yeah.
So I was dictating how they did every single step. The reality is, you want problem solvers, you want performers, and you want to be able to trust them to run with it. Yeah. So in the beginning, maybe you have tighter constraints, but when they're up and running, you want to not think about it. And when a client calls you and asks, hey, what's the status of my widget? You say, you know what? I've been traveling. I've been doing podcasts. I've been doing what I love. Let me talk to my assistant. Let me talk to Tony. He's in charge of widgets. Has he been keeping you updated? Yeah. But I wanted to talk to you. I understand. And I want you to always feel like you can. But Tony runs my widget department.
Yeah.
That's it. That's an evolution.
Yeah.
So I went jogging this morning. My nose is itching me all day. I went jogging and I ran through some clean cut grass. I was like, oh. It's been a while since I've done that. It's not even spring.
Yes.
Well, I know we were going to do focus blocks and everything else, but we're also creeping up on an hour.
Yeah.
We want to talk about that with the next tools. You can keep us updated on Clockwise, and I can talk through the focus blocks and time blocking that I just went through with my new company in Hawaii, and the evolution that they're going through.
Awesome. I think that is an excellent topic for next week.
Yep.
And yeah.
And Ada will not be in a construction zone when that happens, but Until next time, enjoy Financial Fridays, guys. Thanks for showing up, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.